Now is the time to show courage. And I'm always inspired by people who stand up during very difficult circumstances. I represented Colin Kaepernick in 2017, where he refused to submit in the NFL, and it ultimately cost him his job. I was seeing what I thought to be a very heroic act over the past week, and it's with a partner here at the MeidasTouch Network, Harry Litman. You know him from running the Talking Feds YouTube channel, and he's running now the Talking Feds Substack. He's also intermittently been writing for the Los Angeles Times for about 15 years. And over the past 3 years, he was a senior legal correspondent, a senior legal writer over at the Los Angeles Times. He covered trials for them. I knew how much he loved working there. He especially just loved getting out editorial pieces that were very important to him and getting out these legal perspectives. It was very important to him, but when the Los Angeles Times now went in a direction with its billionaire owner who, despite the editorial board's desire to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris, it was overruled by their billionaire owner. And now their billionaire owner has been making a lot of statements that have been very kind of sympathetic to Donald Trump, sympathetic to right-wing disinformation voices. And so Harry Litman took a courageous act. Harry Litman made the decision that he was no longer going to write for the Los Angeles Times, and he quit. And he did it publicly, and he did it proudly against very difficult circumstances. I want to call in Harry Litman right now. You know him from the Talking Feds YouTube channel. And Harry, it must have been a very difficult decision for you. I know how much you told me you loved that job, and it was important for you to do this, and also important publicly. And you sent a message to lots of journalists out there. You sent a message to lots of people working for places where they feel that their work is ultimately going to be undermined by others. So walk us through this decision, Harry.
Thanks, Ben. You are right. It was a really fun platform. I in my own op-eds could write whatever I wanted, and I had good editors. They were good to me. But people have been getting really demoralized for a few months. It's obviously not the mere fact of tacking toward a Republican candidate. It's the really what I see as existential spot we're in, and I've been trying, and you have too, and many colleagues, to really bring that home. And in the position we're in, it just seems to me the newspapers, legacy media, everybody, but especially big news, have such a role to play. And what happened here, I don't think there's much doubt, is it wasn't about, first of all, just so you know, I mean, for a couple years, LA Times editorial page put its different points out there that obviously led to an endorsement of Harris, which they wrote. And at the last minute, the owner just came in and just, decapitated it. And since then, there's been a series of I think there's no way around it, currying favor to Trump. The owner went on Fox News and talked about becoming more fair and balanced, and suggested that maybe it's been a biased paper. And I think we find ourselves in a really tough spot where the newspaper industry in the past would have stood up, and it hasn't. So the Times was one of two major papers who, when Trump rattled his saber, and both made it clear that he would make trouble for whoever didn't please him, and generally made sounds about censoring the media. Both the Washington Post and LA Times, rather than pushing back, kind of threw the paper to the wolves. And so for me, it wasn't interfering with my own work, but now that's really what the LA Times is becoming. They really have, staked out a position of balance, is the way that the owner would put it. But I think when you have a person on one side who's lying all the time and threatening democracy, it's not a matter of balance. It's really a time for standing up and being counted. And, he's Trump has captured the many guardrails already, and he's moving now on the FBI. He's moving on the military. There's precious little institutional force to speak up for democracy, certainly, but just truth. And the idea that a important paper whose North Star ought to be the truth is instead kind of capitulating to the will of the maximum leader. That's what happens in autocratic societies and not in democracies. So it seems to me both a kind of departure from the field of a really important player, and also a kind of step toward what is really potentially happening in real time before our eyes. So, I didn't have any thoughts that somehow this would shake up the owner or anything like that. But the combination of appeasing Trump and for no good reason that had anything to do with who he is as president, quite the contrary, and the really important role that it seems to me you have to look to traditional media to play, just led me to think, I could stay there and they would let me, maybe. Who knows which way the winds are blowing that way. But I just felt I shouldn't be part of the overall enterprise. And moreover, I wanted to bring attention to what I thought was a capitulation in a very, very bad time and place to do it.
Well, Harry, I think it did have the impact, though, of also shaking up the media landscape, independent media becoming now the alternative to corporate media.
Yeah.
And to watch you build out your YouTube channel, the Talking Feds YouTube channel, but your Substack, meteoric growth, frankly, even before you made this announcement of your resignation. So now you have your own platform. You can speak your own voice. You're your own editor. You can invite other people if you want to have them write on your Talking Feds Substack. So do me this favor if you can, because a lot of people see, oh, Harry's on MeidasTouch Network a lot. We see him here. We love the Talking Fed show also. But Harry, if you can, you want me to brag about your background? Just give people your qualifications. I want them to know about you working for, clerking for 2 Supreme Court justices. I want people to know your background so they understand the wealth of knowledge that you're presenting it for. And I know you don't like doing it, but I'm putting you on the spot. And then if you can talk about independent media, though, and what you hope to build.
Thanks, Ben, because it's true. I'm not primarily or haven't been a journalist. I'm someone who was in government, especially Department of Justice, and really saw the importance of the rule of law and constitutional norms and things that you might not know it from the outside, but are really being shredded. The 2 agencies I know best, DOJ and FBI, Trump is looking to install not just loyalists, but people who are whose real mission seems to be to bring them down and erode, and he thinks of them as the enemy within. That's a terrifying and completely wrong-headed prospect from having been there. So I do feel that's what I've kind of brought to the journalism that I've done since mainly Trump took office, is a way of explaining from having been at DOJ, you're right, at the Supreme Court where I clerked and I've argued, and as a U.S. attorney in the field and even a line prosecutor early in my career, I think I see and sort of smell what's happening, as would other people who have, who I worked with before. They all share my kind of consternation. So that is what I think my background at this, really critical juncture helps me to do. And you're right. Now it's the Substack where I'm trying to do it, and it's great. It's not the LA Times, but as you've pointed out again and again, it's really where people are moving to. And just to be independent, I'm not saying I'm always right or wrong, or LA Times, is the opposite, but just the overall value. So now getting to the point you made, we're at a really crippling spot in society I don't think we've ever been in before Trump. There's been real kind of polarization, but we don't even agree on what are facts in the world and what's true. And that is so daunting for trying to have a democracy. And 50% of the people who voted for Trump either didn't care or had forgotten. But, that's what swamps everything now. And we have a president-elect who just wakes up lying and lies all day, and that's totally corrosive of the democracy. And if papers don't shout that out, but rather say, well, we need some balance here, and is there bias? That's the latest effort of the LA Times. Maybe they'll bring AI to bear for figuring out is there bias. No, you don't bring it there. That won't tell you what the facts are in the world. Tell us what's really going on. That's your first responsibility, and what's going on is grave. It's a terrible dereliction, I think, if they don't do it. But yeah, thanks. The thing about the new media is there's so many of them, and people go here and there. On the other hand, you have your shot, as I'm trying to do on my Substack, to not just tell facts. I think many people are basically honest, but to try to take advantage of my vantage point and experience to try to explain. We're not a campaign anymore. The corruptions of the Constitution might be in ways that aren't obvious to people, but folks who know the institutions that he's corrupting and trying to commandeer can shout it out. And by God, I'm going to shout it out in the Substack, even if papers like the LA Times and Washington Post don't. So I'm really glad for that opportunity. And it's the flip side of, what's a painful, I don't want to be over dramatic, but yeah, the LA Times was great. I had great colleagues, great editors, etc. A really great readership. Shame to leave that behind, but I'm really psyched to be able to give my best take on what's going on, and hope that, people who are interested in those kinds of issues can tune in.
Great. Harry Litman, it's the Talking Feds Substack. It's the Talking Feds YouTube channel. It's the Talking Feds podcast. Why do I feel that in about 5 to 10 years, or maybe even sooner, people will be saying Talking Feds as a brand in the same way they used to talk about the LA Times, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. That's just my prediction from my living room to yours, Harry, but that's where I think it's going to go. Make sure everybody you subscribe, and put in the comments below what you think about Harry's decision. Would love to hear how you all feel. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, Ben.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram @MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.